Hello, Zuko here, and yesterday I finished reading The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzi Lee. Evidently this book also just came out yesterday. But no, I did not just plow through it yesterday so I could film a review today. I happened to pre-order this book and it happened to show up early, so nobody sent this to me or anything special like that. I just kinda lucked out and got it early. Now, before I get into this, I do want to mention that this book does contain like mentions of abuse and descriptions of abuse and like parental abuse and stuff. So if that's something that bugs you, maybe don't pick up this book, but I'm not going to go into detail about that. So if you still want to watch this review, go right ahead. First off, this book, it's beautiful. Look at the spine and tell me that's not gorgeous. It's just such a lovely book. Even underneath the dust jacket, even though the spine's pretty plain, I think it's really beautiful. So like, that's a pro. That's a huge pro because this is going to look lovely on my bookshelf. Oh, about the book itself, just to sum it up really quickly, it is an adventure book with queer main characters. Of course, instead of giving the most simple summary I can imagine, I really want to be gushing about this book. I want to get everyone pumped like the grandfather in The Princess Bride when he's like, oh, this book has fencing and fighting and torture and revenge and chases and escapes and true love, and this book doesn't have most of those things, but it does have queer people at a time where people didn't think queer people were a thing. It does have people of color at a time where people like to pretend that people of color didn't exist in Europe. And then it has pirates and revenge and kidnapping and fighting and alchemy and true love and sinking islands. If that doesn't make you want to read a book, we don't read the same books. The author, Mackenzi Lee, I believe has a Bachelor of the Arts in history, which I feel made this book more immersive and easier to get into. Now, I don't really know anything about history, but just from the pictures she painted and stuff, it seemed pretty realistic to what we were taught in social studies in like middle school. The language seemed appropriate and the description seemed appropriate. Nothing was overly flowery or like described as if this was some kind of utopic version of Europe back in the 1600s or whatever, so I really appreciated that because it made it easy to get into this book and be like, okay, so this is what these people were living in. Really, I just enjoyed her writing style and I thought that she did a really wonderful job and I want to read more of the things she writes. This book is about Henry Montagu, I believe is how you pronounce that. He goes by Monty for short. He is on his tour of Europe, which is the thing that upper class and upper middle class young men would do when they were like 18 or whatever for a couple months to a couple of years, depending on how much they could afford it, where they go through Europe to try to like become more cultured and finish learning things and see more things, but also so that they can kind of get rid of that rowdiness that young men tend to have at like 18 and kind of get out all of their drinking, partying, whatever-ness that they want to do before they have to settle down and kind of become men. On his tour, he is joined by his best friend Percy, who is a person of color, and his little sister Felicity. Now, speaking of Felicity, I usually hate when sibling characters are in books, because usually it's done really unnecessarily where the sibling is just there to annoy their older sibling and they're not really there to move the plot along or like have anything interesting to say, but I did not find that the case with Felicity. I think the time where female characters are written to be boring and bland and obnoxious is over, and I pray that's true, because Felicity is a person who in a time where women kind of were supposed to be bland and boring and taught to just kind of be accessories to men, she does not want any of that. She's very strong and independent and smart. It's just a really great character that I enjoyed reading from start to finish. So the best friend slash love interest of the main character, his name is Percy, and he is a man of color. He is half black, I believe. I can't say too much about him without spoiling the book, but he is just such a kind and caring human being, and I really enjoyed him. And honestly, I really loved that there was so much inclusion of people of color in this book, because we like to pretend that black people didn't exist in Europe until like 5 years ago. I know I still see that as an excuse for why Harry Potter is lacking in racial diversity a lot, where people are like, yeah, but it's England, there weren't black people, like, where are you from? At what point were there not black people in England? So I really appreciated the fact that people of color were heavily included in this book. The main character, Monty, he comes from a very privileged place, where like people refer to him as Lord, and he has all this money, and he's never really had to want for much, except for boys, which nobody approves of because it's illegal and a sin, and you know, you kind of don't want to be an illegal sinner, right? Just throwing that out there. Aside from that, he's pretty much had everything handed to him. Now, he does seem to understand that he comes from a place of privilege. What he doesn't get is that not everybody has the same privilege he has. There are many times where he has said something that has offended his sister as a woman or his best friend as a black man because he wasn't thinking and didn't realize that they don't have the same privilege as him, but it is almost always called out by one of the two of them, or even someone else, because they don't want to put up with that bullshit or support that behavior, and I really appreciated that. Monty's place of privilege also comes out a lot in that he hasn't learned how to do most things, so a lot of the time he's useless in these situations where something needs to be done and it's left on Percy or Felicity's shoulders to take on because Monty can't do it. But one of the things I really enjoyed is that Monty starts to go, well, I'm really privileged, I've never suffered, whatever, but no one decides that well, since you're privileged, that doesn't mean you've never struggled. All of Monty's feelings are still valid. Anything that he's suffered through, everyone acknowledges, hey, that's a real problem, and you still have suffered, even though you came from a privileged place. I really enjoyed that. There was no, you can't be sad because you're rich thing. Like, that's not how it works. Honestly, I just found the characters in this so compelling, and the character development was beautiful. I enjoyed it so much. And it has one of my favorite tropes, which is the friends to lovers thing, which I'm kind of a sucker for. Friends to lovers is like second best only to enemies to lovers. I'm kind of garbage like that. I don't think I have too much more to say about this without spoiling it, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys. I want you guys to go pick up the book and read it. But the word zounds, which apparently is like short for God's wounds, is used a lot, and it's an exclamation. And I always read it because it's used in the same way. My brain always immediately translated it to zoinks! And I had to read it like that, and it was ridiculous, but also kind of made the book more funny than it would have been otherwise. Not that the book needed to be more funny, not that the book needed anyone exclaiming zoinks! But, you know, shit happens. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my little book ramble, and I hope you pick up this book. If you read it and you like it, tell me about it. If you read it and you don't like it, you can also tell me about that too. If you've already read it and you enjoyed it, or you didn't, you can tell me about that too. And yeah, I'll see you whenever I do my next video. Now the main character, Monty, he comes from a very blah, blah, blah.